Hello everybody, it's Claire here from Sewn by Claire, and today I thought we'd talk about something a little bit different from our normal Luna videos and the dressmaking ones. So today I'm just going to do a bit of an informal chat really as an introduction to quilting, which is another discipline of sewing that I really love to do. Now I think the quilting's got a bit of a bad reputation really in terms of that it's just considered to be a bit old-fashioned, and certainly some of the designs can be that way, or a very traditional, shall we say, and it's a huge hobby over in America, but actually it's really popular here too, and it's got quite an active following. There's some big Facebook groups and other local groups that you can join that are all about quilting. But if you've ever wanted to dabble but not been quite sure what it involves and also what you need to get started, then I thought I'd give you a bit of an introduction, because like all things you can just get completely overwhelmed with all of the choices, and there are quite a few choices out there that you can make, but I kind of think that you need to bear in mind that it's a bit of a filtering process. Just as I like to make dresses in dressmaking rather than trousers, then you start to, as you start to dabble in a bit of a hobby, then you start to find the areas that you like and those areas that you don't like. So with that in mind, I just thought I'd pull together some of the information and some of the projects that I've done and how I got started, and then what you'll need to get started if you want to have a go, and how to start, and a couple of good reference points as well for people who've got a whole host of videos just on quilting that you can set you off down a rabbit hole of looking into these types of things. So I suppose I just want to whet your appetite a little bit if I can, and if it's something you've never thought of, then I kind of hope to put it on your radar. And if you think it is old-fashioned and boring, then there's a few people that I can hopefully point you in the direction of, which will show you that it's actually quite modern as well in some cases. There's a lot of abstract type quilting. It's a bit of a minefield in terms of there's just so much choice that you can look at. And the same as anything, once you start to look into something, then, and start to do those searches on Facebook or those searches on Google or Pinterest, then you just get overwhelmed and everything can look really complicated to start off with. But there's just some really simple, not rules, but guidelines that you can follow that will get you started, and give you some clue about what to do without you having to be so hung up on having perfection straight away that you just then are just scared into submission and you don't even want to get started. So the first thing I want to do is I kind of take you through a couple of the projects that I started with, and just talk through those and talk through what elements of the quilting they include. Before then we get on to some other bits, and it's a very free form video. It's just me chatting as if you and I are in the same room together. Obviously you can't interrupt me on video like you could do if I was in person, but if you've got any questions, then pop them in the comments below, or you can ask me in my Facebook group as well. I'll put details of that down below, and I just want to encourage everybody just to look at all different aspects of sewing, because even if one doesn't appeal to you immediately, you might find some aspect of it that just kind of crosses over into a different project that you're doing, and so to have a little bit of knowledge about these things is always useful. So let me get a couple of projects together. I've got a whole table full here to show you of different bits and bobs that I thought of. Want to talk about that, and hopefully you'll sit down with me with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or something stronger, a bit of a biscuit, and let's just chat and see where it takes us. So the first thing that I thought I would do is to show you a couple of projects from when I first got started, and just to show you how I started, all the sorts of things that I started with. And one of the first and easy projects to do is a mud rug. And I know that this is perhaps a term that we're not familiar with in the UK, but a mug rug is just somewhere just as a mat really, that's all. Tends to be quite small. I just used a small piece of fabric here, and here we've got some machine applique, and that's where you take a background fabric, you then cut out some shapes in differing fabrics, arrange them artistically, hopefully, following a pattern or a guide or a picture if you like, that you found elsewhere, and then you then stitch round the edges to adhere them to the pattern, to the background fabric, and then you can then start to embellish. And on this one I've used that's biting out, sorry, we go this side instead, a blanket stitch around the edge, and this has been done by machine, not by hand. You can do it by hand if you want to, and it's just used scraps. I mean, as you know, when I'm talking about my quilting and my dressmaking, then if I've got any scraps that are natural fibres, either out of wool or a cotton or a linen, then I will save them, because you know, things like this don't need much fabric at all, and you can actually just use them to accent a different design. The other place that I do save fabrics from is old shirts and clothing before it goes into the charity shop bag. Again, I salvage buttons. If it's an interesting zip, I will save a zip as well. But then the fabrics, if they are natural, and generally you do quilting in natural fibre, so your cottons, your viscose, natural fibre, your felt, wool fabrics as well you can use. And you, I don't know, you just get to do. So this is one of the very first ones. I've got a free motion quilting in the background here, which is done by machine as well, and that's called a meandering pattern, where you're just basically just doing squiggles basically. But the idea is with the background is that you then sorry, my brain's just gone on to something else, is that you try not to either cross over your original stitches, so you're trying to make a path without crossing over. You can cross over if you need to, but that so that you're not starting and stopping all the time with your threads. The other thing that I ought to say really is that the definition of quilting is when you layer 3 layers together. So you have, let me have a look and see where I've got something that's on the go. So not that one, hold on 1 second. Okay, so really the definition of quilting is where you take a fabric, let's use this one here, which is from my quilt that I'm doing at the moment. You then either embellish or you do something with that, or not, you can just have it as a square like that if you want to. It then gets layered with the wrong side onto a piece of what's called wadding or batting. Oh, this is whiting out, sorry, I've had to just adjust the lighting, so it's better that side, isn't it? So this is a, they call it either wadding, we call it in the UK, batting in the United States. It's the same type of thing, but you can get different fibres. So this one's a wool batting, so you can see it's got quite a bit of sponginess to it, if you like, for a want of a better term, quite a few fibres, but that's quite a nice warm one. This one here, I hope you can see, is slightly denser, and that's a cotton one. So if I put those two together, you can see they're both natural fibres again. So we've got a cotton here, which is can't quite see through, and then this one a little bit sheer. But they both work, and you can get different thicknesses, and you can also get bamboo as well, and you can also get, I think, a synthetic one as well, but people tend to stick to the natural fibres if they can do in their quilts, just for longevity. And so what you do is you get your front piece of fabric, you get some batting, which this is an offcut from a much larger piece, and these get quite big, but then you take a backing fabric and you have that together, so you get what's called a quilt sandwich. You have your wadding in between your front and your back, and then you'll sew to attach those together. Obviously you'll be using much bigger pieces of fabric. This is just to demonstrate what a quilt sandwich is, and there's so many designs that you can do, and so many different fabrics as well, fabric collections and etc. like that. So that's what's happened when I'm making my mug rug, is I've got my front fabric on the front here that I've embellished or I've pieced. I've got a backing fabric, in this case this orange stripe, which is again just an offcut and just a scrap piece, but in between these two pieces I've got something like this, which will just give that depth really, if you like. So it gives the loft, as they call it, so it just gives it a nice sort of, makes the stitching stand out and makes your design stand out. And it's basically just a, I mean, it depends on the fabrics, it can be as stiff as you like, it can be really soft, but that's basically what it is. It's just attaching those 3 layers together in some way or another. So that's kind of like the basic. So so as I say, this is where I started. I just saw a design and I just went for it. I think I did this bit first. I didn't add the binding until later, until I could do that. So that's a bound edge that just neatens it. And these are called mitered corners, where they just go at a square, or you can round them as well. So again, there's quite a few terms and things like that you can use, but doing a mug rug is a great way to start. You can use clothes that you've just found in your, in your scrap bag for the charity shop, anything that's cotton, just save old shirts, skirts, anything like that, and then just pop them to one side. You can deconstruct them if you like, because sometimes it can be a bit difficult or a bit challenging to cut into a garment when you think, well, there's nothing wrong with it, so why would I cut it up into bits? But that's why with Rob's shirts, that when he's finished with those, and the ones that are too big, I've cut them straight down into usable pieces of fabric, because then I feel less hung up, if you like, about cutting into it. When it's a new garment and I only want a little bit like that out of it, then I don't feel quite so bad about cutting it up. So this is one thing that I started. So this technique is called a plique, where you attach different fabrics onto a background fabric. That's called a plique, and as I say, you can do this stitch by hand or by machine. Another thing that I've really enjoyed doing and is fabulous for a starter is strip piecing, which is like this. So that looks really, really complicated, doesn't it? Or it comes together complicated, but it's going to act so simple and so rewarding as well to make these. So these are out of my fabrics out of my scrap bag that I've used for different projects over the years so far that I've saved. I'm a bit of a hoarder with that kind of thing. But then what you do is you then join 4 together, and you then start to get a secondary design in the middle with this like square type of thing. And then if I start to join another one together onto the side of it, you can see how we start to get these diagonals again, forming more squares. So I haven't finished all of those yet, and these are just something that I do. Sometimes if you lose your sewing mojo, you just want something just so easy that you don't have to think about it, and that's what I think with these. And they're just so easy. Basically, they're just a background strip of fabric, and I've used an old sheet here, just an old cotton sheet that was, soiled in one part or marked in one part, and then you can cut around it, because there's so much usable fabric on that type of thing. Or old duvet covers are great as well. And you just start with a central strip. So then the fabric pieces, I've got here a whole selection of strips of fabric that I've just used, and obviously these have all got crumpled over the years, but I would iron these before I use them. And I've just cut those into strips. So how big are they? Oh, take measure. Like I said, it's all very fluid this video, so I hope it's not boring for anybody. Oops, throwing it away. And you can use varying strips. These are cut at 1 inch, so these are 1 inch strips, which will give you, because that's another thing. So stitching with quilting, you'll hear a lot about a 1/4 inch seam. So because it comes from America, basically, I think, or primarily from America, there's a big calling, then they use the old imperial measurements. So they measure everything in inches and in yards, whereas we now measure everything in centimetres and metres. So 1 inch is 2.5 centimetres. So that's just a metre, 1 inch piece of fabric. And I just cut my scraps into different sizes, because you only need little skinny little bits to do these kinds of edges, but then you do need some bigger pieces then to do these bigger accent pieces. But eventually, if I keep using those similar sort of fabrics, it'll build up to be a quilt, and then this would then have the wadding put onto the back of it as a whole quilt if I wanted to, and then a backing. And then I could join it together just by echoing these joins here, or different types of designs, or an all over design. But again, it makes something out of nothing, which kind of appeals to me and my wish to recycle where I can do. And hopefully you've noticed that I'm not somebody who says go out and buy all of the stuff. I try to look at what you've got, tell you to look at what you've got in and what you've got available to you. And so that's a really useful thing to do. All you have to do is cut out squares in your backing fabric, and I'll talk later about how to do, how to have the equipment to do that, which you don't need much. And then you can then just start with sewing your strips on. And there are, if you look at strip quilting, which is what this is called, or strip piecing, then this is the way that this is done. And all you do is, when you're making your squares, let's see if I've got a foundation square here for you. Here we go. So I've just got these squares here. Here's one. It's quite thin, which is great, so it doesn't have to be thick. And what you do is you choose a strip of your fabric that's long enough, and you lie it right sides up in the middle and go from, in my case I've just gone corner to corner, just like that. Then I'll snip it off. Okay, so you've just got one strip, it just overhangs the top and the bottom. But then you get your next piece of fabric, wherever that is, and you lay it on top. So you've got right sides together, so just exactly on top of each other. And then what you do is you choose a side to sew, and you'll just sew down one edge here, and then you'll fold it over where it's been stitched and press it flat, and that starts you off. And then you then join your second piece with another piece of fabric. Can we use something that's contrast so you can see it? Let's use this tan one. And then you put it over the edge of the raw edge of the one that you've just attached, and then you stitch that down, and then you fold that one back, and as you can see it starts to build up your strips, and you just carry on to the end, and then when you finish that end you just go and do the other side. And then with all these overhanging bits, you just neaten it up to the edge of your original square, just cut those off so they're flush, and you end up with your square like this. And then you join your squares together, 2 at a time in your chosen design, and then you join 2 more together and then put the 4 together, and before you know it you've got a block like this. And then you just keep on going, you just keep on adding those together. And I just think, if you could even go out and just buy yardage and just cut it up, but I think that's a really effective way of making a quilt. It's going to make it quite dense and quite heavy because you've got your backing fabric and you've got all your seams, but your strips can be any size you want. They could be 3 inches wide if you wanted, but followed by an inch stripe. I mean, there's so much on the internet about strip piecing, and every time I keep remembering about this project, I keep thinking I really must get back to that. But then something else takes my fancy, something shiny, and then that's it, I'm off and doing other things. So it just depends what kind of thing. So let me just pop that to one side. But similar to that is something called English paper piecing. And again, this is all just about building up your fabric, your quilt top, which is the bit that's going to be facing as your right side, if you like, for everything. And I've also done some English paper piecing. So this is your traditional hexagons that I've sewn together using similar fabrics to the ones the quilt there. And I think I'll try and amalgamate those strip piecings with these because it's all similar. So again, it's just scraps that I've got. And with this, all you do is you cut out, I mean, that's a traditional one, isn't it? That's called a grandmother's garden, I think, with the things. But it's just a paper template. It's not... You can use card. I think this is photocopying paper that I've used on here. So it's probably 100 grams a square metre. This is SQM, isn't it? A square metre rather than 80. But, no, it can't be square metre. But anyway. But you cut out, or you can buy, so that you get them more uniform, these paper templates inside here. There's one that was just folding out a moment ago. Where's that one gone? Here, look. So it's just a paper template in a hexagon shape, and then you fix your fabric around it. You cut out a piece of fabric and fix it on. These are actually fixed on with glue, because the glue can just be peeled back. You can get special glue, but you don't need special glue really. You could just use a Pritt stick if you wanted to, but it's good to have one that washes out. So that then gives you your template, and then you just start joining them together. And before you know it, you've got strips like these that I've got. I think I've got 4 quite long ones. And then these can get joined together to make a quilt like that, if that's your style. Or if I wanted to, then with one of the 4 blocks, I could applique this over the edge of one of the 4 blocks just to make it a different sort of design and mix that up. So I might do the main quilt in this, and then a border in this, and then attach it onto a different quilt. So there's so many things that you can do with it, that's quite interesting. There's a project here where I've used these paper templates and I've made squares. This is a more modern design. This cushion actually sits in our bedroom on a occasional chair there. So I got some silk left over from an old project which has got a lovely lustre on it, and I made the templates out of squares exactly the same way as I did this. but then I had a background piece of fabric, and I just started with it, you know, with this sort of like 4 together and making sure the spacing was straight, and then put it on. But this is called it's called modern. There's a lady called Modern Handicraft. I'll look her up and put her in the resources. But she does a lot of quilts like this, and with hexagons as well, which look really, still give a modern twist on this old technique. But yeah, they were just sewn onto a background. I don't even know that I quilted this one because it's an upholstery weight fabric for the cushion. And then I've just done this crisscross design, making sure that I went through all of the corners once I glued those down, and then that then held those on. So they're loose at the sides here, look. So they're not sewn on that section, but then they're all put together, and then on a piped cushion. Looks okay. As I say, it's just all things that just appealed to me, and it's just you know, with a cushion or with a mug rug, you can try a technique, and you don't have to worry about whether you like the whole thing or not before, you know, if you don't know you're going to like it. And there's quite a few people will make one quilt block if they're trying something new, just to have a go, just with scrap fabrics, and not worry about using their precious main fabrics, and just make it up as they go along, you know, according to the pattern, if they're following a pattern. And then they can always make it into a quilt top, or you can make it into a cushion, or into a quilt top, or you can make it into a mug rug or something like that in the future. And there's even quilted jackets out there. So when you talk about sort of mixing disciplines, where did I put that? Yeah, so on here I've made some little pouches. And as you can see, I've got some quilting lines just along here. So this is where I've taken the template for the pouch, had it out flat, and then I've layered together my top fabric, my batting or wadding, and my backing fabric on the inside. So there's a different fabric on the inside, I think here. Yeah, that's that plain blue. I mean, I've got that's a smaller version. That plain blue. So you've got your outside. It's got, and that's what gives this like texture to it, so the bit of a loft that you can see there, and then the inside isn't quilted. Although on some of them I do, but it just depends how I want the finish to be. But again, something else where you take one technique from something and put it onto something else. Likewise, with something like this, you can take your applique shapes and you can applique it onto your bag first before you then stitch it up into your pouch or your bag. I've also seen in the shops as well, you sometimes see beautiful wool skirts, and they've got shapes appliqued onto them as well, and then it's been made up into a skirt. And I really fancy having a go at doing that one day, but again, it's just too many projects and not enough time, as I'm sure you'll agree. So that's just a couple of the projects. I mean, obviously I've got some more traditional ones, so we'll move on to those as well, and then we'll talk about some other bits. I hope I've not bored you yet, but I just find it really interesting to see all the different elements and how they can just put together. So let me just put these down for a moment while we just sort out some other bits and bobs. So another one that I did quite early on was this one here, which you'll have seen on the back of my chair. So this is my first lap quilt that I did, and I really like this one. So again, I had a book that I liked and I saw a design in it, so I thought I'm going to go with it. So I just started with this block here. So this block here has just got some piece corners and side bits on it. You can see the change of fabric just here and into the corners. And then after I'd pieced those bits together, so cut and piece those, then that's been appliqued onto the top. Now I did all of this applique by hand. So if I bring it forward without it getting whited out, perhaps that side's better, then all around, so ignore this dark red stitching here, perhaps look on the leaves here. Round the edges here, I've done something called needle turn applique, which is where you trace your shape onto your fabric, and then you give yourself a little bit of a seam allowance, and then you hold the fabric onto the backing fabric with your finger, and with your needle you turn under the seam allowance back to the drawn shape, and then catch it down with a couple of stitches and turn a bit more and do a bit more. It's just really, it's really mindful as well. So if you're somebody who perhaps just wants to lose yourself in a project sometimes, perhaps there's a lot going off in real life and you just want to lose yourself, then some hand stitching is a really thoughtful and mindful way to lose yourself, and you get the creative buzz as well of making something at the end. And then what I've done on these is I've embellished some of these with some little bit of embroidery, a little bit of chain stitch in the middle of the leaves, which was me going a bit off-piste because that wasn't in the pattern, but I quite like it. And again here I've just done, once I've put mine together, so we've got the three layers. If I turn this round, you can see the stitching goes through to the back on this one, but only this stitching here, only the quilting stitch, which is a big stitch, quilting stitch, which is what I enjoy doing. And I've just put a little French knot at the top there. So again, you can do what you like with these and layer them up. You can layer them up and then cut away the fabric at the background, because, you know, fabric from out of the centre of this shape here can make a circle for somewhere else. So again, it's just being economical with your fabric. But this one's got a brush cotton back on it, and it's really snugly in front of the TV if you just want something over your lap. I know throws are very popular in the UK, but you know, in America you probably use a quilt for the same thing, and it's not got the same, I suppose in the UK it's got a bit of an old-fashioned kind of reputation again, where, you know, it's only grannies who have quilts, or, you know, you're really old if you want a quilt. But these are really a piece of art as well, aren't they? They're stitched art that you put in together. There's a lot of fun and joy in it, and rewarding time put into making it, but then to gift it to somebody who appreciates the time and effort that goes into it is absolutely fabulous as well. That gives you a real nice buzz. And, you know, as I say, with all of the things, there's love in every stitch, you know, which is a bit corny, but I genuinely mean it. You know, it's, you know, all the time when I'm making a project, if it's for somebody else, you're thinking about, you know, what do they like, what are their colours, what's their style, what are their rooms like, what kind of things do they wear? Do they like bright colours, quiet colours, and then are they floral or are they more traditional? Do they like more geometric? And you know, when you're choosing a project to give to somebody, you're putting all of that thought process into it before you even put a stitch onto fabric, and that's really rewarding too. So this is one that I made quite early on. I think I made this with some money I was gifted for my 50th birthday, I think, from work colleagues when I was at work, and I put it into making this quilt, which is just basically 4 blocks around this centre, and then it's just got this leaf and flower border on it. But really rewarding to do. So, and I think I've shown that on my channel before, but not on a quilting video as such. Another thing that this was quite an early one that I did as well. So this one is a little Christmas inspired table mat, really, and I do bring this out at Christmas. So we've got some squares here that have just been sewn together in a design, and then they've been set in these outside corners here, and then some bigger ones. So you know, two techniques there, but just all put together. And then these here are, probably the other side, are cut out shapes in applique, and then I've fused those onto the back with some special mesh that you can buy, which is like a glue that's melted with your iron. And then what happens is then that you just go round, and in this case they have been machine stitched again with blanket stitch, and around the little berries as well, and you cut those out, and then it's just been set in this outside border. And I really, you know, I mean, like if you turn it over, you can see that it's just used a plain, I think I even used a plain sheet for backing on the back of this one, so it doesn't have to be a fancy back. And then again, it's just been bound in a neutral colour. So it's just a way of doing things. And this part here was from what's called a charm pack, or a mini charm pack. So you can get some pre-cut bits of fabric, so you don't have to go out, and I didn't have to buy all of these different fabrics in order to as big pieces and cut them down. You can buy something called a pre-cut, and it has lots of different fabrics, all from the same line usually, and that they all match with each other. So I didn't have to worry about choosing whether this one matched with that one, because the designer had done that for me already. I just had to choose which one goes into which direction, or which placement on that grid, and you can place it down in front of you and have a look at it. The other thing that's quite good with that type of thing is taking a picture and then changing it to black and white, because you can look at the way that the different depths of colour play with each other, so you make sure you've not got too much in one corner and that it's spread evenly around the quilt. But that's something for another day. But again, another, you know, not a big project, but just something to play out. So I had to go at some piecing, had to go at a bit more technical piecing here and here, then different discipline with the applique, and then this one, as I say, was all machine quilted. This one's got a meandering pattern on the back here, and then it's also got a stain there. Looks obviously used in his washing. And then I used just a straight stitch quilting here. So again, it just and a bit extra in the corners. So it just depends what you like and what involves you. And you might be looking at these projects and thinking, oh, they're disgusting. But again, I can't tell you what's going to suit you and what you're going to enjoy doing. You've just got to, you know, look at a pattern, see what calls to you, see if it's the colours or if it's the design or what have you that you like. And then, you know, have a look and read the pattern. You might have to buy a pattern, or you can look for free patterns on Pinterest. Has a lot of free quilting patterns. And then you can pull it all together. And you know, you might like the effect of the paper piecing, English paper piecing, where you've got the paper inside and you're doing your templates. You might like that, or you might like the applique. So there's different ways of looking at it. Again, here's another little table mat that I made. This one is called Beads, I think. This one's by Jordan Fabrics, this quilt. This was a free pattern that I picked up. And on this one we've just got, I used some squares, and they were just cut into smaller squares, and then you just arrange those and sew those together in certain directions, and it comes together. This one I've put a little trim on the edge of the binding, so that was a new technique to me that I'd not done before. And this one again has been hand quilted with big stitches. Again, I do like the big stitch quilting on here. And as you can see, it's not perfect, because in theory this should all be, you know, if you're going to put it into a competition or something, then these should all be neatly even sized, and you shouldn't be able to see some faded and some thicker. It depends how far through I've gone. But this is the three layers of fabric again, as that's been quilted. But you know, I really quite, those colours appealed to me, and I enjoyed doing that one. Learned something as I was doing it, so mission accomplished. That's the way that it should go. And then other things like these are quite nice to make, project bags. So if you do your cross stitch, then project bags are really rewarding to do, because this one's got a quilted back on it. So if I go open it up on the inside, you can see we've got a different fabric on the inside and one on the outside, and then we've got something like this in between the two, which just gives that little padded feel. And then we've put a zip on it, so you've got your bag making elements, so things that you've learned from this discipline come across into this discipline. Or what method of stitching. There was stitched with vinyl. That was a new technique to me as well. Really good fun to do with that. Excuse me. And then we've got a bound edge again, which is pure quilting again. Let me just get a drink. Hold on one second. Apologies for that. So this is where it all just kind of all pulls in together, so that you can then mix and match the disciplines and the different types of sewing. So for example, on my quilt that I'm making at the moment, I'm working on the quilt top, excuse my squeaky chair, making a quilt top here. So I've purchased my pattern. I haven't got the overall pattern, but this is 3 blocks out of the quilt, and it'll all come together. So that's 1, 2, 3 going across the top, 1, 2, 3, and I'm working on this block here at the moment, this section here. I've still got this section down here to do, and so I've pieced together some bits of fabric, which is this blue, and then this it's showing as a polka dot, isn't it really, but it's a little floral. And then the shapes have been cut out here. So I've used a different technique here. There's a lady who does a lot of quilting called Laurie Holt, who's an American, who does a lot, where she uses a sewing interfacing. So you trace out your pieces. So on this was a failure of one of the bits that I did. So this was for an angel body on a different block. So it was supposed to be an angel body like that on a different block, but I did it wrong. It went the wrong way round, so I had to redo it. But she uses she uses sewing interfacing, and what you do is you put your right side together with sewable interfacing, after you've traced out your design. So you've got a line to follow, and you cut that out with a bit of seam allowance, 1/4 inch usually. And then you sew it all the way round on top of that, on the line that you've drawn. And then you cut a hole in the back of the interfacing and push everything through right way round and push it out. And then that's what you used then, and that's what I've done with all of these pieces here. Before then you stitch it onto your background fabric depending on the placement of where it is, and there'll be lines here for vines. If you look on the pattern here, there's vines in here going in here, and there's some strings for her swing there that I've not drawn on yet, so that will connect from out from here across to here, and just I've got to embroider those on yet. So again, so a different discipline. I've not tried this one before, but I decided that for this quilt I didn't want raw edge because I don't want it to go, sometimes they can go a little bit worn on the edges, and I wanted it to be neater than that, but I didn't want the hassle of hand turned applique. I wanted to know beforehand that my shape was fairly smooth on the edges. So that's what I've done on this one. So this one's a quilt called I Believe in Angels by Bunny Hill Designs. And this is one block, or part of one block, and there'll be 9 blocks, and then I'm making this for my granddaughter Clementine. But I can do a video on how I do this later on, and you get in the pattern you get a picture like this, which hopefully resembles this. And then that's what I trace off in order to get the designs onto the fabric, and then I've just hand stitched those pieces onto that's the back of my piece, and that's the front. And in this one you're given all of the yardage, all of the fabrics together to cut out of, and I think there's going to be tons left over. But again, something like this, a kit for this quilt, I think it was about £150, so it's a lot of money. It's a big investment for me into one project. Hopefully Clementine will have it for the rest of her life. Hopefully she enjoys it. I've tried to choose something that's kind of quaint, but not too babyish, that will appeal in the future. And as a Christmas quilt, the idea is it'll just keep coming out year after year after year. So, you know, again, you can choose how you do these things, but you know, the investment for a mug rug from scraps is pretty much zero. You might have to buy the batting, you know, the wadding to go inside this stuff, to go inside it, but you can get smaller bits than that from the quilting shops, and there are quilting shops around. You can buy it by the metre, so you could buy 1/2 metre or even 1/4 metre if you needed to, and start off really small, and then you can grow it into something like this in the future when you've done a couple of quilts. I mean, I've done this one as well. This was just a charm pack one that I got, and it's got big sticks quilting on the back of it, and you can have those around you. In terms of the fabrics, and I mentioned briefly pre-cuts, you get things like this. Let me just show you, hold on a second. So this one here is what's called a pre-cut. It just means that it's already been cut out for you into a certain size. So this one is 5 inch, this is a charm pack, this is 5 inch squares. And there's roughly 42 different fabrics in here, all by the same designer. And the designer usually has name on the front. So this one's Brenda Riddle Designs, and this is called Bramble Cottage. So that's a really cute kitsch kind of floral, country floral sort of type of fabrics in there. But when a quilt designer puts together their collection of fabrics, they guarantee, or they use the same colour inks throughout the whole collection. So the idea is that you can choose any of these fabrics, any one or more of these fabrics, and it will coordinate with everything else within the bundle, within that fabric range. So you could choose that green and that blue maybe, and the idea is that those two, if you put those together in a quilt, would work tonally with each other. And again, it's just that's one size. You can also get pre-cuts that are 1/4 of that, so a mini charm. So if you remember this project here where I did these squares, that was from a mini charm pack, and so it was just 2.5 inch squares, and I picked up that from a quilting shop, and then you can then sew it together to make a piece to quilt top, or you can use it as accents in your So like if that was, let's say that's a 2.5 inch square, I can cut out of that for a leaf or for the top of a flower or for the circles down here for these little buds. And you can just pop those onto your projects and you don't have to then worry about are they going to match, because I get overwhelmed in a quilting shop with all of the choices when they're not together in collections, because I don't feel I've got a brilliant eye for colour. It's getting better because you train it and you learn it, but actually it's while you're trying to learn the craft, you want something that makes it a bit easier for you and almost guarantees success. So you can get things like this charm pack here. Here's another one on a different designer. This one's by Sarah Watts and is called Pearl for Ruby Star Society. They do some modern fabrics, but this one's all on a knitting theme. So there's all different fabrics in there, some of which are like a knitted pattern on there, some of which are balls of wool. So again, you can use this then to make a quilt, and all of the colours in here should all match and all complement each other. Again, if I see a collection I like, then I'll buy something like this, which is a layer cake, and that's 10-inch squares. And then these terms are all for Moda, I think. So Moda Fabrics are a very big fabric producer. I think they're American based, I think, but I'm not 100% sure. So don't quote me on that. But again, this layer cake, I saw this one and I just really love some of the prints in this design. So I bought a layer cake, and eventually I can match that up with other fabrics and make a quilt out of that one, should I wish. Haven't yet cut into it because it's a bit too precious at the moment. The other thing you can buy are strips of fabric. I haven't got any strips here at the moment. Got a couple more, sort of things. So I don't buy tons of these. These aren't that expensive. I mean, this one was £11.70 for this collection of 42 strips. The little charm pack, mini charm packs can come in as little as like £5 as well. So you don't have to have a lot of money for an investment in that to make a project once you've come off using scraps. So again, you can choose what you do. But yeah, what else was I going to show you? Oh, materials. Let's just show you a couple of things that you might need to actually get started that are essential to buy. But then once you've got some scraps of fabric and you've got these just 2 or 3 tools, then you're ready to go. So I'll do that, wrap it up there as a bit of an introduction, and hopefully you'll have enjoyed just having this little chat with me today. So let me get onto the equipment first before I start waffling on about something else. Hold on. So whereas in fabric you'll use in dressmaking you'll use a tape measure to do your measuring, and that has to be nice and flexible for cutting out, and then you'll use scissors and pins. And you may even use a French curve, something like this, which is for dressmaking, which gets all your curves all nice and neat for you. In quilting, generally you're working with straight edges for your actual piecing. It can work with curves as well, but that's a bit more of an advanced technique. But you get these quilting rulers because they're quite thick. Don't know if you can see that. So probably they're quite thick, aren't they? What are they? 2/8 of an inch thick. So just that's quite a nice edge to run along, and rulers are essential, but I've only got 3, and I've done all of these quilts with 3. I've got this smaller 6.5 by 6.5 inch one, got this one which is 6.5 by 12 inch, and then I've got one that goes across the whole width of the fabric as well, which is slightly bigger, but it's probably a bit too big to show on camera. So you will need a ruler, because you need to have, for accurate piecing, you need to have your straight lines and to be sure that they're straight. The other thing that you'll need is what's called a rotary cutter, and this is actually a razor blade edge in here that you will use, and it always comes with a protective guard, because the razor blade on here is literally as sharp as it would be for men shaving. It's just touch your fingers on it and you're going to have a nick on your fingers straight away. So this one has a blade, so I can just push that in and bring that down, and that then exposes the blade to enable me to cut. Makes a really satisfying sound as it goes through the fabric. And again, these rulers have this lovely edge because you butt your ruler against the edge of your fabric and you press against that, so you're holding your ruler down on your fabric, and you are then using your rotary cutter against the edge of your straight edge, and that then gives you your beautifully straight cut edge. Obviously in previous years and generations they just used scissors before they had these, but these have revolutionised quilting and piecing, definitely. The other thing that you'll need is a self-healing mat. This one is by, I think it's Olfa, I think. Can't see the instructions on it. It's actually a DAFA one, but Olfa, OLFA, which is the brand of this rotary cutter here, is a very big brand as well. As you can see, this one's an Olfa as well. I don't have any particular allegiance to any. I use any, but the three things together are what you need. You need a ruler of some description with a straight edge side. This one's a very useful size. A 6.5 by 12 has been really helpful because it's big enough to do a decent sized project, but you use just a small amount if you wish to. And it's got lines on here, but generally they are all in inches because quilting generally is done in inches. But then also they've got, I don't know if you can see this, they've got the degree line. So that's a 45 degree, a 60 degree and a 30 degree line. So again, sometimes we have to line things up and do those. Can't see that behind there. Hold on 1 second. Put that behind and suddenly, as if by magic, all of those lines appear for you. And you can use those lines then to line up against the edge of your fabric before you then trim it off. So if we were using... let's use that dark red square here because that will show up nicely against. So let's use this white background. So if this red square here was being cut out, that's a 2.5 by 2.5 square, as we can see there underneath the thing there. And if I need to take that down to 2 inches, then I would match my lines up with the corners of the fabric, and then I would trim off the excess by putting my fabric down on my cutting mat, lining up the edges, lines on my ruler with the edges, and then cutting across. You always cut away from you, never toward you. But I'll do a video on rotary cutting as a whole. But those are the only things that you need to get started in quilting. Really, is just some fabrics, and it can be scraps. You need a ruler, a rotary cutter, and you need a mat to be able to cut onto. But once you've got those, you can then add in your wadding, so your batting once you're ready and you've progressed. But again, you can take time to build together your quilt. I mean, the quilt that I'm doing here, which is Reefer Clementine, I've got it on these boards here. Excuse me. You know, this quilt is going to take me all year to do. So that's why I didn't mind, you know, sort of making that initial investment. I saved up for it, and then I made the initial investment into the pack of the fabrics. I've bought my pattern that's come through, and then now I just take my time in stitching it. I did a little bit last night, so I stitched this bit on here and the little angel wings on yesterday. But I've still got to do her face. I've still got to do the vine. So it's a time, but it's meant to be time consuming. You can get quick fix projects that you can do. But again, it's just, you know, and this is some of the instructions that I got, so crossing things off as I cut it out and what have you. But, you know, let me just tilt the camera up, hold on 1 second. So what I'm really trying to say is that with quilting, you absolutely don't, you know, you can buy your fabric, you can use scraps, you can do your materials, you know, a quilting ruler or a cutting mat of any size. You can get much smaller ones as well. So have a look on Amazon or your local quilting shop for those. You can actually start it off as a really cheap, economical way to start and get into a discipline of stitching, and then move on as you wish as time goes on. So, you know, it's just one of those things. I just thought I'd just do a quick introduction to it and maybe whet somebody's appetite. Let me know what you think to this video. See if it's something you'd like to have a dabble at, or you like the idea of bringing a plique into dressmaking, or you like the thought of quilting different elements for a cushion or for your home decor type thing. I'm going to leave it there for now though, folks, because I could just talk all day about any of these subjects. I'll leave a link to my Facebook group, so if you do want to talk to me some more, then I'll put a link to my Facebook group down here, and we talk about all kinds of sewing in there. It's only a new group at the moment. I mean, what are we at the moment? January 2023. I think we've got 26 members. So it's very, very small. It's going to grow, but I want it to be a really friendly, safe space for people who are just starting out or who are improving, who want to ask questions, and who want to just share what they've made. And the beauty is in making something and getting that buzz and that creative joy from making something. It doesn't have to be perfect, because actually the bravery comes from actually starting something and having a go, and in time you'll develop your skills and your expertise more. But for now, let's just get together and just enjoy sewing, because I just love it. So I hope everybody's having a great day. I hope you've enjoyed this little chat. I hope I've not bored anybody. And yeah, I'll speak to you all soon. So take care, everybody, and happy stitching. Bye.